Uh-huh.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here to facilitate this workshop today. I'm Lara Goulart. I'm a professor at RIT, and I'm here today with Joey Zeledon. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Um,
Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone.
Thanks. Joey Zeledon is an industrial designer. He believes that good design is like good music. It's familiar, engaging, and makes you feel. It's something you want to play on repeat. Joey loves to play between the familiar and new, putting a spin on common archetypes with thoughtful combinations. Having led successful design projects at industry stalwarts like HP, Steelcase, Smart Design, Continuum, and Clark's, Joy's experience is vast. Since graduating from RIT's Industrial Design program in 2006, he has been designing iconic products for both young and established brands that make food, furniture, housewares, lighting, spaces, shoes, and tech. In his workshop today called Design with Wonder, Joey has some questions for us. Have you ever gotten stuck in ideation and wanted a fresh approach to generating new ideas? Design with Wonder is a workshop that will help you see things differently and find joy in experimentation. Thank you, Joy, and welcome.
Thank you, Lada, for that wonderful introduction. It was very nice. And thanks to everyone at RIT for inviting me. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you, and of course to all of the participants. So thanks for spending your mornings or wherever you might be, your the next 2 hours with me, with us. So okay, as Lada said, I'm Joey Zeledon, and this is Design with Wonder. So this is my workshop. Okay, so let's jump in. Let me see. Okay, so this workshop is focused more on the ideation phase of the design process, right? So ultimately, I'm hoping that I help at least a little bit to help you see things differently and to find even more joy in experimentation, right? Because I think sometimes the ideation phase can be a bit daunting, maybe overwhelming at times, and uncertain. But I think there's a lot of beauty in the messiness of it. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so today we have 2 hours, or a little less than 2 hours now. So the first half, I'm going to talk a bit about my career, and then I'll spend some time on Joey Wonders series. So this is an Instagram series that I started at the beginning of the pandemic in March, with all the free time I had, being stuck in quarantine. And then I'll go through some case studies of this kind of approach in real life, in real manufactured products, just a few examples. And then the second half will be more of the workshop. So we'll start out with a warm-up exercise, then get into the design prompt that will really tie into your projects that you're working on. And then we'll ultimately end up with a share out with some volunteers and a reflection. Sound good? All right, let's jump in. Okay, so a little bit about my career. So Lada kind of touched on some of the places that I worked, but I'll just give you some highlights. So I graduated from RIT's Industrial Design program in 2006, and since then I've been working professionally as an industrial designer. And I've worked at a whole range of companies in different industries that I have found really helpful in my design work, pulling from various fields and finding synergies and cross-pollination. So ultimately, I actually, since childhood, I wanted to be a shoe designer, and that's what led me to industrial design in the first place and to study design at RIT. And so that's what I set out to do. And that's what I did first out of the gate, out of RIT. So I worked for a couple of years as a shoe designer at Clark's in Boston, Massachusetts. And that experience was amazing. I got to travel to Asia for the first time, working with some factories, learning about this just really interesting product and industry, construction of soft goods, hard goods. It was an amazing experience. But then I kind of had a change of heart and a change of scope, that I wanted to essentially not be limited to just one type of industry, and I wanted to learn more. So I moved into design consulting, and I was in design consulting for a span of 8 years. And 4 of those years I worked at Continuum, also in Boston, working for a variety of clients. And then I spent an additional 4 years at Smart Design in New York City, and part of that time in their London studio. And throughout those 8 years of design consulting, it really broadened my scope of the design world, and also design thinking and user-centered design and all of that, those great topics, and going beyond the objects, right? And I got to work for a wide range of clients, from OXO to PepsiCo and Google, among many others. And then I was actually recruited to work at Steelcase in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I moved from New York City to Michigan to work at Steelcase, which I believe is the world's largest office furniture company. And at Steelcase, I, of course, got to design some furniture over the span of almost 3 years. And I think that was a really pivotal moment in my career as well, because I think this is when I really scaled up kind of the type of end product, right? Because up until that point, well, I started with the feet, right? And what goes around the feet. Then I went into kitchen products, things you hold with your hands, and things that you eat, a lot of designs for food companies. And then ultimately things that you sit on, chairs or spaces that you experience. So that was a really big learning opportunity for me to expand the scale at which I was working. And then after a few years at Steelcase, I actually got a really interesting opportunity to work in tech. And so I took a role with HP, which is where I am now. I've been here for almost 2 years in Barcelona, heading up their industrial design team here in Barcelona. And then on the side of that, since right around the time I joined HP, I launched my own studio, which is what I work on in my free time, all of the free time that I have. And with my studio, I work on some side projects and in selective client work. And so that's a little bit of a snapshot of my career sort of trajectory and range of experience. And actually, I just realized I missed the opportunity to do this little line animation. That's okay. I always do that. I always miss that for some reason. I got to take that out. Okay, and just to give you a little bit of a peek at what I've been up to at HP with a massive team, an amazing team of really talented people. We've been looking at reinventing what it means to print, and to print specifically on a larger scale. So large format printing, otherwise known as plotters, right? And so in a way we've been doing this reinvention is by reframing what a plotter could be, and how we talk about it now is furniture that prints. And so that's, I think the image speaks for itself. So just to give you a peek behind the curtain of what I've been up to at HP. And this project actually is a great example of, the designing with wonder methodology and practice, because it's all about reframing and seeing things differently. And then part of the Joey Zeledon studio that I do on the side is, most notably my design book called Touchy Feely, which is a book all about emotional ergonomics. So how we interact with the physical world around us, and not just technically, the technical ergonomics, but how it makes us feel. And then, of course, to the right, my CoCheck Chair, which is actually an idea I came up with studying at RIT my senior year in the furniture studio course with Stan Rickle as the professor. And this is something that was a slow burn, and I finally had the time to really bring it to life, and it's now a part of my studio. And so that is the recap on my career and the trajectory. And I can answer your questions a bit later if you have them. And then most recently, and I would categorize this under my studio umbrella, but this is my latest creation, very conceptual exploration. I call Joey Wonders. And Joey Wonders is a series that I started on Instagram, and I began it in March, once we were all in quarantine, and I was looking for something to spend my time on and really use my creative energy, for some new thinking that I was looking for. And essentially what Joey Wonders is an exploration of existing iconography and really looking to put spins and mashups, on these existing archetypes that are all around us in the world. And what I really loved doing in particular was taking, such strong icons that we all know or have some familiarity with, and just tweaking them, looking for really interesting combinations, ways to, have people see them in a new light, almost create a new narrative around it. And that's in my introduction, the introduction that Lara gave of what I really love to do is create these mashups, right? In my professional work and in my, kind of this more artistic lens, through this more artistic lens. But ultimately, it's kind of a sliding scale, a spectrum, of a way of thinking about design. And the end result can be something more artistic like this and almost provocative and even kind of a tongue-in-cheek result, or it can be a manufactured product. But ultimately, it's the same mindset, it's the same approach. And a lot of how I do this, I think it's more intuition, and it's not a really glamorous process necessarily. A lot of it is just Google image search and looking for things that jump out at me, and it's just playing. It's similar to word association, if you've ever done that, but with visuals, right? So you start to make certain associations and see connections, between disparate elements that exist. And so that's just an overview of the Joey Wonders project. And I'm doing really well for time, so I'm gonna take my time. I don't want to speed through this too much. And I'll go through some of these examples in a bit more detail in a second. Okay, so why do I call it Joey Wonders? So let's get to the word wonder, which I really love this word, specifically because it can be both a verb and a noun. So to wonder as a verb is to think about things in a questioning and sometimes doubting way, right? So this is as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary. So to think about things in a questioning and sometimes doubting way, right? So you can act on wonder. You can literally wonder about things, obviously, right? I think we all know that. But as a noun, wonder is also a feeling of great surprise and admiration caused by seeing or experiencing something that is strange and new. and so that's really why I love this word wonder. It's really versatile and it can go in many different directions. And what's interesting too is, skipping ahead, you can almost you can wonder as a verb, and then you can think about things in a new way, and then you can ultimately surprise yourself even, right, with what kind of ideas can come from that wondering. Okay, so let me get a little bit more specific here and not so abstract. All right. So how do you So we've defined the word wonder, but now let's talk about a more practical approach to this methodology. Okay, which is Scamper. So I don't know how many of you have heard of this methodology, but it's I should give credit. So this was invented by a person named Alex Osborne, and Scamper essentially is an acronym that stands for what you see on the screen, but essentially it's a series of thought starters for ideation, for thinking about things in new ways, right? So the idea here is if you're on your projects and you get stuck, you find yourself in a bit of a designer's block. This can be a way for you to break out of that and to kind of go beyond linear thinking and to go more lateral and analogous. And this happens to me quite often, where I get stuck and I have to come back to this approach, this methodology, and not go after the solution head on. Sometimes you have to take a few steps back to move forward. And so what Scamper stands for is the following. So substitute, combine, adapt, magnify, put to other uses, eliminate, and rearrange. So substitute, we ask, what materials, rules, or process can be changed? Combine, can this be combined with another idea? Adapt, how would a radical context change the idea? Magnify, what can be made bigger or exaggerated? And I would say here, actually, magnify, I would say it could also be the opposite, right? What could be made smaller and more de-emphasized? And then put to other uses. What else could this be used for? So it could have a second life, a second purpose. Eliminate. What if something were smaller or removed entirely? And rearrange. How could the sequence or patterns change? And just by, if you're thinking about now of your project, and you just start to ask yourself these questions, you'll find that it kind of pulls you in a whole other mindset, a whole other approach. And so we'll apply this in the workshop section. Okay. All right. So now, I'm going to go through some of my provocations, my Joey Wonders examples, to show you, of what the things that I've come up with, at least on the more extreme examples, of how I was putting Scamper to use and really practicing this methodology. Okay, I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions that I will be happy to answer later on. Okay, so let's start with substitute. So what materials, rules, or process can be changed? This is my most provocative example, so don't worry. It gets a little bit more PC beyond this. So this clearly is substituting a locker dial, a lock dial, a master lock dial, with a nipple, and by doing so, I think I don't need to explain this one, right? I think it kind of speaks for itself. But why I love this one so much is because, sure, yes, it's sexual, but it's really, it's playing with the narrative around the interaction that you have, right? Specifically thinking about, this lock that keeps you in between, you and something of a prized possession, something of high value. And something I didn't note before, which was when I started this Joey Wonders series, I actually created, I really wanted to make it more engaging with the community on Instagram. And so I started doing this, this caption contest where I ask everyone, how would you caption this visual? And it's been so much fun getting so many different, excuse me, sorry for that noise. So many different captions and ideas and ways, thoughts that people have of putting words to images, and it's been a super fun experiment. So this is still ongoing. So here, and then of course I pick a winning caption. So here, I actually, I picked my own caption, so this is a secret combination. Okay, next one. So here's another substitute. So what materials, rules, or process can be changed? The caption here was Dustable, captioned by M3 Design. And so here I've substituted, obviously, the Dyson vacuums, rolling ball that they have. It's their, I would say, the most iconic visual element of this design with a bowling ball. So this one's very tongue-in-cheek. Again, substitute what materials, rules, or process can be changed. Here we have the pen-tongue chair, captioned by Gracina Bakut. So here we took the Pantone chair and really, I mean, made it into a tongue, essentially, right? So, and combining it with, I don't know if people recognize this icon, but this is that guy from the band Kiss, who was known for making this kind of gesture with their tongue. Okay. Next, we have combine. So can this be combined with another idea? And this caption, the winning caption here was Loungewear, captioned by Charlie Nunn. And this one was actually my most successful mashup. I don't entirely know why some of them really blow up and other ones are less interesting to people, but for whatever reason it was. And I think something to also note on these mashups and using Scamper is that it's not, a lot of times you can use a combination of them in one mashup, right? And I think this one's a good example of that. So it's this both a combination of a foot in the Herman Miller lounge chair, obviously, and making it into a shoe, but in doing so we're also using scale, right? We're changing contexts, we're changing proportions, and so I think in all of these they end up being kind of this interesting combination of multiple of those Scampers put to practice. But the ones that I chose were, I would say, the leading one, the leading provocation. All right, next we have another combine. So here it's Bull in an Apple Store is captioned by Nathaniel Gerides. And this one is one of my favorite captions. So here, obviously, I took a smartphone or an iPhone in particular and replaced the screen with a cracked china plate. And I think what I was playing with here, and this one I think has a bit more depth to it, but it was that same idea of how we treat certain things more precious than others, right? And I think this correlation between a broken dish, a broken plate that is so prized, by certain families, and that expands generations, to a cracked phone screen, and how they can have a similar reaction and invoke a similar feeling, when and if it happens. Next, we have adapt. So how would a radical context change the idea? So here we have Chair Venera as the captioned by Yash Bansali. I hope I'm getting these names right. And so here, the adaptation or the context change was taking the Wiggle Chair, I believe it's called, the Wiggle Chair by Frank Gehry, and placing it in the context of this pasta strainer or pasta maker, right? And I think so. This one's clearly changing the context, but also changing the scale, and even putting in a secondary use. So that's Chair Venera. Okay. Next, we have another adapt. How would a radical context change the idea? So here we have Etch a Deck, captioned by Jeff Sprague. So with this one, I took obviously the Etch-a-Sketch icon and replaced the screen with a PowerPoint, your classic PowerPoint frame, right? And by doing so, it really messes with your head of how you would engage with this interaction, right? Because when you think about using Etch-a-Sketch to begin with, I mean, it's hard enough, but then, by having it be PowerPoint, um, I think this one here is really, in a way, putting PowerPoint to shame, and the limitations that it has, to begin with, or at least the how people think of it, right? People are always griping about PowerPoint, so this was really trying to go extreme with that interaction. Next we have, and I think this might be Alex's favorite, if I recall. We have another adapt. So here we're taking the, I can't even remember Chanel. I couldn't even remember the name of this originally. Of course, Chanel number 5 icon, right? And changing it to be Purell. So what I changed here was the name, so Purell, obviously, and then the color from the original, I think, is more of a gold to a more of the green Purell color. And I think I really lucked out in the number of letters, of course, from Chanel to Purell, so it really worked out. So this one was a very limited amount of manipulation on the image. And then the winning caption was, ew, I touched someone. This was another amazing caption. This one by Jeremiah Beetham. And I think this one also is interesting, has a really strong narrative around it, right? And around its use, going from something that's, that enables or celebrates closeness, right? And sensuality, and evolving it to be just the opposite, right? Cleanliness and creating a distance between you and the world around you, especially. And this one was really, I think very timely, of course, with the pandemic and how it's, really changed how we view interacting in society and in public spaces. Then another adapt. This one is a bit of a stretch as an adapt, but I was having a hard time placing this one. So maybe you have some thoughts here. You could tell me later. This is attention grabber, captioned by Jeremiah. Another Jeremiah Beetham caption. He's a super user for Joey Wonders, high contributor. So here I was playing with the juicer, the Salif juicer by Alessi. And this one wasn't, I actually didn't know how to mash this one up exactly. And I actually think it worked better as a comparison, right? It was just more of an analysis, seeing an interesting commonality between these two gestures of the juicer with the claw machine. And take it for what you will. But let me just say this, a lot of people complain about the usability of the juicer. And so I was indirectly associating that gripe with also how challenging it can be to win a prize using the claw machine. Next, we have Magnify. So what can be made bigger or exaggerated? Here, the caption is a binding contract, captioned by Zoe Gomer, who is also an RIT grad. So this one here was, so I guess what I magnified, of course, clearly is the bike lock, or sorry, the bike lock, the paper clip. And so by magnifying the paper clip to be at the same scale as the bike lock, I was able to make this interesting mashup where, the bike lock somehow continues on to create this paper clip like gesture and motif. And I think this one, again, is also playing with how you interact with it, right? And what a bike lock represents, similarly like the master lock, between creating a division between you or someone else and something of higher value. Another Magnify. This one is where I took the chair, another chair by Frank Gehry. What is the name of this chair? I think it's the cross check. No. Is that right? I'm not thinking of the exact name. But anyways, the winning caption actually plays with the name of the chair, which is the reason why I chose it. So Check Please, captioned by Chance Johansson, was really clever. I really loved this because it's using the name or a part of the name of the chair in the caption, but also in a way that it's speaking to how it's being consumed, right? It's obviously a type of pasta, linguine, fettuccine. And just a side note on the image manipulation. I think I really lucked out on this one, but I really wanted to do it in a way that really felt as if the chair was being lifted like it was pasta, and I think the way the chair was designed somehow has that feeling of bounciness, of buoyancy. Next, we have another Magnify. So this caption is Cut to the Chase, captioned by Mason Day, another great caption. And so I think so the thing obviously that was, you could either say this was Magnify or even Shrink, because either I would say the Fisker's scissor, half of the scissor was magnified, or the Chase Lounge was shrunken down. But this mashup, I think, is a bit of a stretch, but it creates sort of this interesting deformity of the thumb hole part of the scissor off of that Chase Lounge, which I really love as a result of this mashup. Some people claim that this looks like a bird kind of eating, like hunting and pecking little seeds, which is funny. All right, next. Next, we have put to other uses. So what else could this be used for? And the caption here was Peel the Burn by Kobe Trout, another RIT grad. Got a lot of RIT support here. Okay, so for put to other uses, this one's really one of my favorites because it's actually realistic. And so sometimes you get lucky with these mashups. You get something that could actually be still useful in real life. So here I took the OXO peeler handles, the potato peelers, and attached them to a jump rope. And in doing so, it's basically taking this super ergonomic narrative of the handles of the peeler and changing the activity, right? So changing it from hyper ergonomic potato peeling or vegetable peeling to hyper ergonomic jump roping, which was a super interesting narrative. I haven't tried this out myself, but this is actually one of the mashups that I would love to prototype and see how it feels. All right, and then put to other uses. I actually put in here my CoCheck chair because in hindsight, I realized, this actually was what I was doing, in that design without even realizing it. Just by taking, your standard plastic tubular hangers and placing them on this cantilever tubular metal frame. It creates a chair, obviously, out of those hangers. So you're giving the hangers a second use, but also maintaining its original intention, its original use, where you can slide the hangers off of the frame and hang up your clothes with it. So another example of a mashup where you can create something of function, of some value, something that you could potentially commercialize. Here we go. And then on to eliminate. So what if something were smaller or removed entirely? So the winning caption here, A Light Celebration, captioned by Sarah Das. This is one of my favorite Joey Wonders because I think, well, let me explain it first. Well, obviously, basically I took the floss floss light, I forget, the Arco lamp, I believe it's called, and replace the shade and the bulb with obviously this, your classic pinata donkey motif. And so, I think what's really interesting about this one is that it's well, first of all, it's changing the narrative and the way you interact with this object, right? So you go from something that lights the room to something where you have a celebration, where you have, some kind of party. Someone's taking a stick and trying to hit the piñata to open it up, and it just completely transforms the interaction and the use case, which is really interesting. But I also really love, in particular, the tension between kind of this high design, iconic, piece of high design, the Arco lamp by Floss, this high-end brand, mixing it with such a pedestrian and family-friendly, motif as this piñata, this donkey piñata, and it kind of creates this narrative of, sort of, I don't know, in a way, it's like design within reach, but different, sort of leveling the playing field a bit, which is something I really love. Okay, another rearrange. How could the sequence or patterns change? So here, the winning caption was "Save it for later." Oh, so this is one of the captions I came up with. Every once in a while, I choose my own caption, but not very often, I promise. So here we have this super iconic, famous clock. I believe is Herman Miller, right, or Vitra. It might be Vitra. I can't recall. Anyways, what I did here, obviously, was change one of the balls at the end and replaced it with a chewed up piece of bubble gum. And in doing so, well, first of all, I don't know about all of you, but, whenever I see this clock, I always think of these as gumballs at the end of these metal sticks. And so this is something that I always wanted to do. And by doing so, it really, changes how you see it. I think it's, in its original state, it is a very playful design, but I think this is taking one step further. But it's also, playing with the narrative of, time passing. You can imagine, like, this chewed up piece of gum. You chew there, save it for later, but you move to the next one, and it kind of changes the whole way you interact with this design. And I think this one is also another example of that leveling the playing field. It's taking high design and making it more pedestrian, more accessible and playful. All right, rearrange. How could the sequence or patterns change? Here we have Aims Over Easy, captioned by Creighton Berman. And here I took, again, I love the Chase Lounge. I love playing with this one, so you saw it in a previous mashup. So here I took, instead of combining it with Fiskars scissors, I decided to fill in the hole that was usually there with an egg yolk, because I was staring at this for the longest time, saying this reminds me of something, and I finally came up with it, and I was like, yes, that's it. It looks like a sunny side up, an egg that you're flipping on the frying pan. And so, yeah, not much more to say about this one. I think it speaks for itself. Another rearrange. How could the sequence or patterns change? So here, the caption is edit undo. And essentially what I did here was I just took a number 2 pencil image and extended the eraser length. So I maintained actually more or less the pencil length or the pencil height that it comes originally, and I just changed the ratio of pencil to eraser. And in doing so, this one also changes the use case and how you how you would imagine using this. So obviously the narrative becomes, you're erasing more than you're creating, right? So it's I think this this design would be for very hesitant users. And that's it. Those are my Joey Wonders examples. So I hope you liked them. I hope none of them offended you too much. But it's always an experiment, and it's fun creating things that get a rise out of people. So the key takeaway from this, in my opinion, is that a technique like this can help you in your ideation, right? It can help you think of good ideas, bad ideas, and crazy ideas, that could lead you to something really special, really brilliant, right? And the idea, a really important thing to keep in mind is that you should not limit yourself in the process, right? And I think this is something that we all know in ideation when you're in the mode and the mindset of a divergent mindset. You shouldn't be limiting your ideas. It's really good to think of bad ideas, because those bad ideas can lead you to really amazing ideas. And it's just really important to keep in mind that it's to be comfortable with with bad ideas, and just sit with it and just live in it. And it just takes practice. But now I'm going to share with you 3 real life examples of this methodology, in my opinion, put to use. All right. So here's the first one. So again, back with the OXO Potato Peeler, which was designed by Smart Design, collaboration with OXO in the early 90s or so. And I mentioned the story, right? The story of it originally. For those who don't know, this this potato peeler, essentially at the time, what came before this was just the potato peeler was just like a formed piece of metal, not comfortable at all to hold on to, zero ergonomics. And so at the time, doing something like this and putting a grippy, rubberized, ergonomic handle to it was game-changing for that industry, for kitchen products. But what's really also fascinating was one of the things that inspired this handle, and in particular those little fins you see on the sides, was a rubberized bicycle grip. Not this one in particular. This is just one I found on Google Image. But I think it was more of that classic kind of, what is the one? More of a BMX style, where it has like just a simple, pattern of those ribs that go across it. But, it's really a simple thing. And it's like, oh yeah, obviously, but it's that idea, right? It's that idea of taking something that already exists in the world and asking yourself, what else could this be used for? What if I change the context of this from, riding a bicycle, which is great to have something really grippy, but then applying it in the kitchen, right? Or changing the user, to an extreme user, from someone who's able-bodied and younger to someone who's arthritis and older, and has limitation in their use. And by doing that, you can come up with something so brilliant and game-changing. Here's another example. So this is actually something from my own portfolio that I worked on while I was at Smart Design, also for OXO. And I was on a fantastic team who worked on this project. And this was, we were designing OXO's first ever line of electrics, electric products, coffee makers, mixers, tea kettles, things like that. And we were working on this hand mixer, trying to come up with, or just looking at the use case. How is it being used? Because the first thing we did was kind of took the formula set by that potato peeler, right? And saying, okay, obviously it's OXO, the handle needs to be super grippable, ergonomic, right? We did that, and it's like, okay, but what else? We need to have a new narrative, a new hero moment, right? And so we investigated more of how people were using these mixers in their context, in their kitchens. And it just so happened that, one of the users in particular we were interviewing was elderly and had low visibility or limited visibility personally, and also in her kitchen where she mixed her food. The batter she was mixing was on the countertop where it was really limited spotlighting, and so that's ultimately what led to this opportunity. But it was also, in a way, taking something that already existed and applying it in a different context. So you see here on the left the power drill, which this industry, I don't know when this began and who came up with this idea, but it's brilliant in and of itself, taking that light, that spotlight built into the product for that particular action and use case. But then we thought, well, let's apply it to a hand mixer, right? I mean, both of them are activities where you're creating something new, and who's not to say that one's more professional than the other. And so it was a lot about empowerment and this prosumer narrative that we were trying to create. All right, and then the last case study is also a project that I worked on at Smart Design. And so this project was for a company called Hot Tools, who makes hairstyling products, professional products for stylists in salons. And what we were looking at in this process was, or what we were working on in particular, was a hair curling iron. And what we did, well, one of the first innovations that we came up with was actually putting the curling iron from a straight stick into this L shape. And in doing so, it created a much more ergonomic position for the stylist when they were curling their client's hair. And because of that L shape, it allowed their elbows to be much lower where they had to hold it, because this is an action that they had to do all day, every day throughout the week. And it's something where it was creating a lot of strain on their bodies, their elbows. But regardless, that's not the main point of the story here. The main feature that I wanted to point out was a vibration feature, a haptic feedback that we also built into the handle. And it's something that, we quite literally took inspiration from with the toothbrush, electric toothbrush. I think it was Oral-B at the time. And I think most people know, some of these toothbrushes have this haptic feedback built in. So after 2 minutes, it pulses, it vibrates to let you know it's been 2 minutes, you've brushed your teeth for an appropriate amount of time, right? And so we said, well, let's apply that in this context, in this use case, because in interviewing and talking with these stylists, many of them mentioned how challenging it was for them to have to count in their head to 10 or to however long they had to keep their client's hair wrapped on, the hot bar, so that way it didn't burn, but also it was on there long enough where it held the curl. So it was a very, very particular action and sequence of events that needed to happen for them, but they needed to count in their heads, right? Depending on who that client was and what their hair type was, which is even more complicated. And on top of that, their client might have been talkative and in conversation, like you would have a conversation with your hairdresser. And so we knew we needed to come up with something to help this person not have to count on their head. So by taking the haptic feedback and putting it into this product, it just took one variable out of the equation. And in conclusion, this is another great example, in my opinion, of using this design with wonder, thinking of things that exist in other areas and combining it in new ways.